Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. You know, there's lots of ways to gain market eminence, but there's one big way you can lose it, which is stand up in front of a group and open your mouth. So, to prevent you from falling into that horrible trap, Cindy Skalicky is here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here.
So you have written this fantastic book, Red Light, Green Light, and the subtitle is How Top Leaders Present with Polish, Get Buy-in, and Become More Influential.
Yeah.
My feeling has always been that executives, entrepreneurs, corporate folks, every time they open their mouth, it is never a neutral situation. Either they will come out ahead or they will fall behind with that person, with that audience, whoever it is. You could be talking to 3 people informally. You could be doing a board presentation in front of 25 board members of the world's largest corporations, all of which you help people do.
Right.
And you're either gonna be plus or you're gonna be minus. You are never gonna walk out of that room with the same status that you walked in.
Exactly. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the backstory and your professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today. And then we'll use that as the springboard for our chat.
Yes. And you're totally right. First of all, David, it's like a relationship, right? It's either growing or dying. And it's the same thing with executive presence. And especially as we get into higher and higher levels, the first 3 to 5 words out of your mouth, for example, or the first 3 to 5 minutes of a longer talk, you have to think hard about those. So we'll get into that in a little bit and how our model in the book helps leaders crystallize that.
Yeah.
But yes, background is that I am originally from the Chicagoland area, and I started my career in global advertising and PR after doing a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in speech communications with a specialization in rhetoric. And that is what
as most of us do.
As most of
us do.
I know.
I mean, everyone listening has at least some kind of degree in rhetoric.
Right. Well, if you've not really studied that, the better way to say that is that it's the art and science of persuasion. Ooh. And I learned early on from a couple of professors, some of my guides that have taken me through the journey, that I just have a knack for being what I now call like a message engineer. So I will look very deeply at a message and very deeply at a messenger and determine which parts of it, to use some of your language, David, are funky, broken, and sad. Yes. And, why aren't they working when this particular speaker is addressing an audience? And what can we do to tighten the gears so the entire persuasive engine of innovation is really rolling on all cylinders? And so, I started in global advertising and global PR, and I ended up being attracted to or slotted into roles where I was working with pharma and science brands, which was sort of just happenstance.
Yeah.
But I loved working with difficult content. Okay, so that led me into working with smart people, crazy smart scientists, PhDs, and researchers. They are my people. And that's partly because they're so smart and they know they need my help because they need help articulating their complex ideas, lest they get stuck on the drawing room floor and never see the light of day. So I did that at the beginning of my career, took time off, had a family. We have 4 kids, and I started On Point Communications 10 years ago, 10 years and 2 months. And now we work with, leaders in science, tech, pharma, and innovation on their storytelling at all levels of the organization. And it's just been the wildest ride.
That's amazing. Really, really fun. And then this book is, folks that are watching the video will see that it is a full color, beautifully designed amazingly well laid out tome. And you got pictures, you got diagrams, you've got all kinds of amazing things in here. Tell me about the process, because I think a lot of folks listening are like, I wonder if I should write a book. Is writing a book hard? What does it take to write a book? What what went into writing this book, and who'd you write the book for?
For sure. Well, what went into the book at the last minute is sort of what you were flipping through just now, David. I don't know about you, but when I read books, I skip straight to the center section that's got the shiny pages of the pictures of like the person in their early life and the whole thing. So when people pick up the book, you'll see I've flagged a bunch of pages in the center that are green outlined. And that's the story behind the story of how this model was built. So that was just a fun addition kind of at the last minute that I'm glad I did. But yes, if you have a book idea and you want to write a book, this is my first book, but there's more to come. It was a complex journey, but I'm so glad I went through it. It was easy in parts and hard in others. One part I did not love was the editing process. It was... I don't know who loves that, but I have an extreme appreciation now for editors in general. And but what I ended up doing, David, is I have recorded in the past. I had recorded so many of the sessions I deliver on this how-to model, which is a messaging framework, and I transcribed it. And I transcribed me teaching it, and it provided for me a really clear outline to how to structure the book. And after that, it wasn't easy, I wouldn't say, but I knew what I wanted to say after teaching this for so many years, that the first pass of that my editor took he said it was about 80% there, which was thrilling to me. And then it took me a heck of a long time to get it to 100. But yeah, it was a fun process, and there's more to come, and I'll do it better next time and easier.
Yeah. So, the first time is always kind of a living nightmare, but that's okay. So talk about the core of the book, and the core of some of your teaching is this how-to model. And that is an acronym, HOWTO.
Right.
Walk us through the 5 parts of that, and maybe some key points and some favorite tidbits from each one.
Sure. And I'll position this for listeners who might be driving or walking or whatnot. If you can, we'll do a little visualization exercise to put this in context so that you understand the letters. And ultimately, the reason that I built the model, let's start with that, is just that I saw so many speakers who weren't getting their audiences to that green light of go. So the premise of the book, of course, is how can a speaker get their audience to view their idea as a green light idea, not a red light idea? How do we move our audience like a stoplight from the red light of risk through the yellow light of, okay, I'm warming up to this, to the green light of go, whatever it is that you need from your stakeholder audience. So many speakers just were falling flat because they were speaking from what they felt they needed to say to demonstrate their expertise, instead of sitting in the chair of the audience member to say, what does my audience need from me? And where is my audience in relationship to my idea? Do they know what I'm talking about or have no idea, right? So the acronym is so if you're sitting in an audience and you're watching someone come out on a stage and they're about to present an idea, the how-to model is the little demands, I might suggest, that an audience has for the speaker. So the H is hook me, and that's the first thing we want our speaker to do. Hook me, get my attention. The next letter is O for orient me. Orient me to what it is we're talking about. What is the problem that exists? And can you please contextualize that for me with a story? Okay. W is, oh, okay, cool. I get what we're doing here. Can you win me over to your idea being a good one? And like, what is it that you are positioning me to do as an audience member? So that's the how, HOW. And the last 2 letters are T and O for T, tell me more. Tell me the detail. Convince me why I should do the thing you're asking me to, right? That's the majority of most messages is in the T.
Yeah.
And the final letter is O for offer me, which means offer me something to do, take action. That's your ask basically, but just reframed. So that's the how model.
It's totally brilliant. And these are your people, not mine. So I'm going to take an intuitive leap here.
Go for it.
Most really intelligent, technical, scientific professionals, they start with the T. They come out on stage and they start with the T right away.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
And it's like, whoa, dudette. What is going on? I'm not sure what we're talking about. And you're diving into the nuts and the bolts and the tech and the tools and the wonderfulness and all of this detail.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not even sure why I'm in this seat.
Right. And they might lead with the W, which is like, accept my plan, which would be the W sentence, and then just, cascade for 29 more minutes into the T about something the audience has no idea what it's for. So,
and then they wonder, why are these presentations so hard?
Right. And why do I end up looking so bad, even though I'm speaking so smart?
Exactly. You're listening to this podcast. You're walking the dog. You're on the treadmill. You're driving in the car. Wouldn't it be great to bring this message to your next association conference, corporate meeting, sales kickoff, or private event? I do keynotes, seminars, and workshops, and I would love to serve your group. If that sounds intriguing, just drop me an email, david@doitmarketing.com. So let's just go a little bit deeper into each one. Talk to me about hook. A hook is that a story? Is that a 3-minute preamble? Could that literally be one sentence, depending on the context of the talk?
Yep. It's actually really wicked fast. It's usually 10 seconds or so. It's the first sentence or even the first 5 to 8 words. Maybe
how about that?
A rhetorical question. It's something that makes the audience go, what's that all about? And usually the hook can visually be a gorgeous title slide, right? Like something to hook you visually is also important. But the hook ought to be it's really the first sentence. And often that should be very short. It's also often the last thing we come up with. Because we'll sit down with a client and they'll be like, okay, Cindy, here's my idea for a presentation. What should my hook be? I'm like, I don't know yet. We kind of need to figure that out like we would the title of a paper or the title of a book sometimes. But yeah, it needs to literally grab the audience by the mouth like a hook grabs a fish. I mean, it really needs to be something that grabs attention because our attention is so fleeting.
And would you say for that reason that most people who get up in front of a group in person, virtually, they're competing with the audience's devices, right?
100%.
Their phones, or if they're in front of a computer, their email screen.
Yes, 100%. In fact, there's a whole conversation in that chapter, which is chapter 3, where we start talking about each letter, one per chapter, about the attention spans that we're fighting for. And the other intangible that we're fighting against is what's on people's minds, whether it's someone at home who's sick or they're hungry or tired or, there's just so much. That's why the hook needs to be in plain language. It needs to be simple. It needs to literally be a very short, well-delivered, memorized, usually sentence. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about O, which is orient me.
Yeah.
And one of the early subsections of that chapter is one of my favorite phrases, which is, I have good news and I have other news.
Right. Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about the orienting, good, bad, and ugly.
The orienting is most curious letter. It's the hardest letter for individuals to come up with the content for. It is the reason that I built the whole model is because everybody was skipping this letter. That's kind of what I discerned after much agonizing re-engineering of the messages. But the orient me is like, show me the landscape of what is right now. How in the world am I going to buy into your idea or your strategy, your 5-year strategy plan, for example, when I don't know what's happening now, or I don't have at least a reminder of what the status quo is, which you're going to posit as the speaker as being a problem and that needs fixing. So the orient me is a short amount of time in the talk, typically, but it is critical to do well so that we have everybody in the room singing from the same sheet of music about what is happening right now, which then leads to a beautiful unveiling of the W moment of like, that's why we need the ABC 5-year strategy plan, because it's going to boom, boom, and boom. So people are confused a lot by this letter and the content that needs to sit behind it. It often can be 5 sentences, but it could take us a week to figure out what those 5 sentences should be.
Yeah, it's funny. This reminds me, there was, I forget who it was, but there was some famous speech writer, orator person, that might have been George F. Will or someone else, that was looking specifically at Barack Obama's speech structure,
cadence,
and whether you love them or hate them, Democrat, Republican, red, blue, green, purple, I don't care what you are. The 3-part structure, which I think the H and the O in your model encompass this, is that if you look at every Obama speech, 3 parts, no matter how long, 5 minutes, an hour. First part, here's how we got here.
Yes.
So here's how we got here is a combination of hook and orient.
Oh, yes, right? Absolutely.
Second part is here's who we are, right? So it's an identity, shared identity. We want better schools for our kids, right? That's who we are, right? We're concerned parents. We want lower taxes for, low income people. That's who we are. That's our values. That's our vision, etc. So part 1 is here's how we got here. Part 2 is here's who we are. And then part 3 is here's where we're going.
Yes. That's fantastic.
And so, but I mean, that encompasses all 5
It does.
parts.
Yeah, so it does.
5 into 3.
Totally.
But really, really smart. So let's talk about W.
Well, and David, let me just pop. I have one thought I want to share about that second part with Obama. What he's doing in that here's who we are piece. The bell that rang in my mind is, rhetorically speaking, from a rhetorical devices standpoint, he's doing something called creating identification with the audience so that we can all feel united behind this idea. And what's harder than anything is creating unity when you're the only one speaking. But once you have that, like, you can do pretty much anything with your audience. So it's a brilliant rhetorical move. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you for Win Me Over. Now, Win Me Over, I'm guessing some of your technical, professional, scientific folks go, oh, Cindy, I don't want to be selling this. I don't want to seem salesy or sleazy or pushy, or I don't want to be imposing my will on these people. How does Win Me Over work for the sales shy?
I know. I'm like,
in my world, this is like, got to sell the idea, pitch the idea, get them excited. But not everyone's like me. In fact, most scientific and technical professionals are the opposite of me. They would rather do anything else than sell the idea.
Right. I know. I'm laughing because you said something like, and they don't want to sell them over onto their idea so bluntly. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, we need to get after.
That's right.
I mean, I think there's been such a souring of sales messaging over the decades, as you know better than just about anybody. And yet, what about the reality that direct communication, succinct and direct communication, wins the day every day, right? We don't need all the flowery nonsense of showmanship, but we can say this strategy is the best path to getting our numbers righted in 12 months, hands down. And let me show you why that is. So that sentence about, the Project Purple strategy that I'm going to show you today is our very best path toward writing our numbers by the end of 2020, whatever. And they're like, ooh, I mean, that's kind of a win me sentence over. It's like, come into my world the way I see this and listen to what I have created. That's your innovative, language.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. You mentioned that there's a depth trap, not a death trap, but a depth trap in W. So what is the depth trap that people will read about in the book?
The depth trap is when you share your W moment and you keep going too long before you get into that rationale part. Okay. So it can just, you get into the technical weeds of something before turning your audience toward, telling me more about why it's proven instead of what it looks like. Like, why are my audience or why are my stakeholders willing to do this? I don't really want to know all about the back end features of the app. If you're selling an app, for example, I don't need to know it was built on Python or whatever, not yet anyway. So I'd say that declarative sentence of W really ought to almost hang in the air depending on the setting. Okay. Yeah. And then you can go into, now let's together dive into how we've come to this conclusion and why this is the best path. And then you take them through a more structured T section of content versus blathering on and on.
And so if you do the H and the O and the W the right way, you've really primed them to be curious about the T.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, those letters don't take up very much time in your average presentation. There's 3 letters, but in many cases, we're already looking at T-type content by, 5 minutes into a 30-minute presentation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what are some of the building blocks of the Tell Me More segment.
Well, in Tell Me More, you really get to strut your stuff. There's a whole section actually about how to strut your stuff. And I want to sit on this for a second because of technical leaders who lead with technical language and technical verbiage. And they want to start with that to show themselves worthy. Right? In fact, just last week, David, I was working with some technical researchers who are in customer conversations, and they need desperately to stop solving the problem of the customer without listening first to the customer's needs, right? And the person I was speaking to said, Cindy, these people who are in a sales role now are, just like you said, PhDs and engineers. And guess what? They earned all their stripes in academia, where all they were meant to do was prove their point and write research papers and talk about how they know their stuff. And so it's literally ingrained in their, neurological setup to talk and prove and showcase their expertise. And now when they get into a large organization and they're being asked to flip the switch, now they're supposed to listen and start where the audience is. That's very abrupt, and it's a big change. So the T is where you can do that stuff and you get to show your expertise. But importantly, it can't happen until you've done the H, O, and the W, because it's all about the audience. So I guess what I would say is I would caution people, when you're building content in your slide deck or your scripting that supports that T, that logical, convincing part, you want to structure it so it's orderly. Have 3 sections of how we're going to look through what the app looks like, who's used it, and where we think it's going to go in the market, for example. Yeah. So it just requires forethought versus, just you eating up the time. You got to think about where your audience is. That's the whole idea.
And then closing the deal, if you will, is the offer me section. What does that look like, and what are some typical stumbling blocks there?
Stumbling blocks for the O include not asking directly and
perhaps not asking at all.
Perhaps not asking at all, and seriously assuming the sale. This happens with a lot of nonprofits who are so big on heart that they struggle to ask for a number, an actual number on the screen. So your ask needs to be direct, specific, and have a sense of urgency and scarcity if that is what's called for in the situation. Yeah. That's something I learned from you, right?
Yeah.
So those are some of the pieces about the O. And they also need to it has to have like an inspiring feel when you close a presentation. It shouldn't just fall flat like a ton of bricks. It should feel like there's visionary language.
Now, if people are reading the book or they're working with you, they have all this amazing structure. They've planned this out. They've done the thinking. They've done the partitioning of their talk in this whole new way that they're very excited about. Talk about practice, practicing it, rehearsing it, because people will often say, well, practice makes perfect. Well, it's like only if you practice the right way, because practicing the wrong way will make this a disaster.
Right.
So talk about practicing red light, practicing green light.
Yeah. For sure. I'm going to pull from an example. Last year, I worked with a team at the C-suite level in a Fortune 50 company, and they were preparing for a corporate board presentation. And they had gotten tapped on the shoulder. The message was like, yo, you're going to be the main event for the board meeting. And you need to sell us this strategy, not sell us, but you need to go give us an overview of this strategy. Yeah. So they were doing a bunch of speaking, probably to the tune of 3 to 4 hours on 2 separate days. So we worked with this presenting team of 4 people to help them rehearse, especially the first 5 to 7 minutes. Because the reality is, in some of these really high stakes rooms that are, in these large organizations and companies, you don't get the floor for the whole time. They've got a pre-read deck, they've looked at your stuff, and they want to get to what they want to get to. And so we've done a lot of work with teams to really help them rehearse the first 5 minutes and rehearse the first opening lines. And so to your point, we need to practice, which means we've written some semblance of a script. Even if it's bullets, we've got some words we've chosen, some phrases we want to use because we've selected them. And so you practice it out loud, and then you record it, and you put it in your phone. You record it, like you speak it right into the phone, and you're not recording from memory. You're reading the script from the screen so that you're capturing the I nailed it version of your talk. And then we're visualizing the whole time, like visualizing yourself doing great, visualizing your audience interested and nodding their heads, maybe writing things down, maybe thinking about the questions they might ask you. And you're visualizing yourself feeling confident, in control, and in command. And what we have found is that the rehearsal techniques we teach can help reduce rehearsal time and energy by 40%.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
And that's huge for these leaders who don't have, quote unquote, don't have time, right? Yeah. We need to make some time, first of all. But yeah, those are some of the techniques that are really helping these busy leaders. You've got your phone, use it. Listen to yourself nailing it. Wow, what a great way to reframe.
And then it kind of builds those grooves in the mind so that you now are like listening to it. You can practice a few more times, re-listen to it. Yeah.
Well, David, you and I, we speak for a living. These people do not. And they are nervous to do these things, and they don't trust storytelling at first blush. It's scary, and they don't know if it's going to really work. So there's a trust component that I have to make sure is laid in the foundation. Like, you got to trust me. It's going to work, but you need to do it well, because you can do story wrong.
Exactly right. Well, so exciting. 2 final questions as we're starting to land the plane here.
You bet.
The final question is, where can people learn more about you, and the book, and the programs, and all of that?
Yeah.
But even before we get to that, if folks were to take one overarching idea from our conversation today about doing more and better green light presentations, what would you want the core takeaway idea for them to be?
The core takeaway idea or prompt would be, depending on what the person is trying to persuade the audience to do, I'd say, who is the person how could you come up with a small vignette of a story to explain your idea to someone else? So tell me about a woman who's got the same problem that your product is going to solve, and what is a day in the life for Sue or Jeff or Fred, right? Who's going to use your product or service? Even if it's an internal audience in a large corporation, doesn't matter. Who's the human person that's going to benefit from what you are building, and how can you succinctly think through a day in the life? That feels easy to most people. Like, what's a day in the life of a person who doesn't have what I've built? A day in the life for someone who doesn't have what I've built, David, is someone who's stuck in front of a screen with 36 slides and no idea what the pull through should be, what the titles should be, if there should be images, how to organize the slide deck, how to open it. This is going to give people structure. It's a 5-step, one thing at a time. I will walk you through this to, so that you nail it and get people to green lights. So that's the day in the life for people in my world.
I would also add to that, a day in the life of people that have not read the book is the sense of impending doom every time they have to be in front of a room. It could be in front of a room of 2 people or 200 people.
Exactly.
But the sense of, oh my God, I hate every minute of this. When can this be over?
Yeah.
And I hope I don't do too much damage.
Right.
This time.
If you listeners thought about, truly sank your teeth into, what might it feel like if I felt totally alive in front of a group? Sit with that for a second, and it will motivate you to do something about how you're approaching presentations if you haven't invested in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the book is Red Light, Green Light. Cindy, where can people go to get connected and stay connected to more Cindy Skalicky brilliance?
Yes, I am very active at LinkedIn. That's usually the best place to find me and connect. We have a newsletter there that we roll out once a week that's filled with tips. But of course, also head over to Amazon where you can buy the book. It's occasionally on a lower price, which today it is. And we've got a holiday sale going on. But there's the book is for sale there. It's a bestseller in several categories, and we're very proud to be bringing it to the masses. And it can be a great gift for a person in your life or a team that you lead. And we would love to share what other leaders have found so much success with that we felt the need to scale the model and write a book about it.
Tremendous. And as they like to say, everywhere fine books are sold.
That's right.
Because
everywhere
it is, in fact, a fine book.
Thank you.
So great job on all of your success. You are such a rock star, and thank you for sharing all your wisdom with us today.
Oh, you bet. Thanks, David, for having me. Appreciate it.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.